favour, either raise their hand or keep quiet, whichever. Okay, thank you. Are there any against? In which case, thank you formally elected Mr. Chairman. So, if I may hand over to you, Councillor Parsons.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'd like to take item 2 on the agenda with the election of the Vice Chair. I would suggest and propose, indeed, from the Chair, if I'm allowed to do that, Councillor Grothick, Vice Chair of the Council. If I could have a seconder, please.
Either me or Joel, I think, are both happy to second round.
Thank you. Is there anybody against Councillor Grothick standing as Vice Chairman, please? No, in that case, I confirm Councillor Grothick is Vice Chair of the Engagement Board. Before we, thank you. Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I would just like to go through, if I may, and ask each of you on the meeting just to briefly introduce yourselves, please. Could we start with Amy Langdon?
Yeah, I'm Amy Langdon. I'm on Briar. I'm representing Liz on the offer.
Thank you very much, Amy. Dr. Whitney Curry.
Hello, Dr. Whitney Curry, Advanced Practitioner in Public Health for Cornwall Council Health and Wellbeing and the Chair of the Outbreak Local Incident Response Team.
Thank you very much, Whitney. Nicola.
Yeah, Senior Manager here at the Council. I'm also on the Local Incident Response Team and responsible for emergency planning.
Thank you. Joel.
Joel Williams, elected member for St Mary's, and sitting on this as Chair of the Local Health and Wellbeing Board.
Thank you. Harry Legg.
Councillor Harry Legg, elected member for St Agnes and representative on this board for the Off Islands as well.
Thank you. Fran Grothick.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Vice Chair for Council.
Stephen.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer and advising this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul.
Afternoon, colleagues. Paul Masters, Chief Executive, and I also sit on the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Outbreak Board. More on that later.
Thank you. Tom.
Hi everybody, I'm Tom Walton. I'm the Senior Officer, Democratic and Corporate, and I'm sitting on this board as an observer from a comms capacity.
Thank you. Dale, have you joined us? No. John?
Hi, Chairman. Yes, I'm sitting as a member and director of the IP.
Thank you, John. Darren?
Good afternoon, all. I'm Darren White, Temporary Inspector and Police Lead for Devon and Cornwall Police for the Isles of Scilly.
Thank you, Darren. Have I missed anybody? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move straight on, please, to item 3 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of the membership and our terms of reference. So you're obviously aware of the membership because we've just gone through that. The terms of reference, hopefully you have all received. Are there any questions or issues to do with either the membership or the terms of reference, please?
Chair, I have not received the terms of reference. In fact, I asked for them earlier and was told that we would be given them verbally in the meeting.
Okay, right. Well, I will do that right now.
Could I help on that, Chairman? Partly as a result of Councillor Legg Andy Thomas and I had a chat earlier this afternoon, and the terms of reference are attached to the invite. So if you click on the terms of reference on the invitation on your calendar, then the terms of reference are there, and you can go through them heading by heading if that helps, because they do list the co-optees, but it'd be useful just to have a formal vote to admit them to the membership of the board.
Thank you very much, Stephen. In view of the fact that Harry and maybe other members haven't seen that yet, I'm actually going to move on to agenda item 4 and come back to agenda item 3 when our membership had a chance to have a look at the terms of reference, if that's acceptable with you, Stephen.
It is indeed, and we've just been joined by Dale as well. So,
thank you. Welcome, Dale. Would you just like to mention who you are, please, for the members around the table?
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Dale Clark, St Mary's Harbour Authority, Harbour Master for Duchy of Cornwall.
Thank you very much, Dale. We have various people on the call here. We have Amy Langdon from Briar. We have Dr. Whitney Curry from Public Health England. We have Nicola, our Senior Manager, Councillors Joel Williams, Harry Legg, Fran Grothick, and myself. We have Stephen, who's our Governance Monitoring Officer, Paul, our Chief Executive, Tom Walton, our Council Officer for Comms, John May, who you know, and Darren White, our Police Sergeant. So those are the people on the call, Dale, just for your information. So we are moving on to item 4 on our agenda, which is to note the outbreak and evacuation plan, and I'd just like to hand over to Paul Masters for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Afternoon again, colleagues. Just to give some background to this and what this group is about. If you forgive me, I'll just go back to the beginning of the pandemic, etc., and then how all this group begins to fit in. So there's a piece of legislation called the Civil Contingencies Act, of which councils are what are called Category 1 responders, the same as the police and NHS, etc. And when one of those bodies is unable to deal with an incident of scale on its own, it can invoke a major incident. And that happened across the country back some months ago. When that happens, all the emergency management processes are kicked in, which will have been, no doubt, following over the last couple of months. And that process is chaired by Devon and Cornwall Police and feeds all the way up to COBRA, which you'll have heard about in terms of the Cabinet Office and the emergency response. All of that work that carried out, and I must say, was exemplary in preparing the islands for the cases of any COVID that might come our way and all the issues that might ensue. There was a massive amount of multi-agency work that carried on during that period, not just on the islands but across the country. And as we got into the beginning of June, the government decided that there would be a new requirement on directors of public health to write what's called an outbreak plan. And those plans had to be in place across the country and submitted to government by the end of June. That target was achieved by all directors of public health across the country, and the South West particularly is held up of good practice in terms of the consistency of those plans and all the thought that's gone into them. As those plans were published, the emergency management processes were stood down at the end of June, and that's because the responsibility now for dealing with any outbreak that may occur is now the responsibility of the directors of public health and the local authority. And so therefore it was deemed appropriate at that time for the emergency management process to stand down and the outbreak processes to stand up. And underpinning that now, there are two boards, well, there's a number of boards, but two ones that you need to know about today, and Dr. Curry will no doubt come in and add some further flavour to it. The first is the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Outbreak Board, of which this is not. The Outbreak Board is chaired by the Director of Public Health and is made up of a whole series of colleagues, health-related, etc. It meets covering, as I said, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and it is that board's responsibility to not only write the outbreak plan, but also to be our, in effect, advisors and directors of any action that may well need to be taken in localities, fed down from central government and Public Health England, all the way down through to our local arrangements. And Dr. Curry, as she said, chairs a local board on the islands, particularly about that as well. So in effect, that's where all of your technical and scientific and medical advice will sit should a case occur on the islands, or multiple cases, and it's their role, as I said, in effect, to give us guidance and leadership in terms of what needs to happen. This role, the engagement board, as Stephen said in his introduction, the Prime Minister asked that the leaders of councils or the chairman of councils take the role in leading that. And this is, as it said, it's an engagement board, so it is got a number of purposes. The first is, in effect, is to, should anything happen, and we of course hope it doesn't, on the islands, we would hear about it from the Director of Public Health, and it's our role to try and help how to deal with the communications about that would land well on the islands and give our community confidence that we're handling it appropriately and sensitively and swiftly. So in effect, it's a critical friend to the Director of Public Health on how to communicate any action that's going to be taken in order to calm nerves on the islands and to give people the confidence that the public authorities are doing their role. The second function is engagement, and what that means, obviously, is to you're nominated in effect across the islands, and hopefully a bit of the eyes and ears of the islands to hear what's going on the ground, and is there anything that the public authorities should be doing that we're not doing that we could do better, either in terms of messages or actions, or what we're doing not being understood. So it's about engagement, and also it's a role in terms of when and if local action is needed. Is that action going to be carried out in the appropriate way on the islands? So in fact, it's not about directing anything, so please be clear about that. It's not about making decisions about what's going to happen. It's about helping guide to ensure that those actions land well on the islands and are fit for purpose for the local community. It's, as I said, it's very much a critical friend. And the third element is to think about if you feel that there are particular functions or powers that the local authority or our colleagues don't have that perhaps we should have, then it's to feed that back to full council in order that full council can do its democratic leadership role, and if it wishes to lobby for any additional amendment to legislation or powers or funding or whatever it might be that you feel links into that as well. So that in a nutshell is it, Chairman. I think it'd be worth bringing Dr. Curry in for some of the local island arrangements.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. So as Paul said, I chair the local outbreak team for the Isles of Scilly, and one of the really key points that's come out of our weekly meetings and our weekly scenario planning is about how we work with the engagement board more closely moving forward in terms of those communications, both proactive and reactive, about what the outbreak team is here for, what we're doing, the decisions that are being made, and being as transparent as possible, and also letting your residents and your guests understand and know what the processes and procedures are so that they're assured and you're assured that we're following the proper protocols and procedures, and that there is oversight every step of the way. And so I think maybe when we get down to possibly understanding exactly what's been going on in the islands, when I talk about the numbers in the next agenda item, we can also talk about how we can engage with you more closely in reporting those things as we move forward. Is that okay?
Thank you, Dr. Curry. Robert, you're on mute.
I wonder what was wrong. I wanted wanted to come in earlier actually and apologise, Whitney, because I said you were from Public Health England, but you're obviously more local than that, and yeah, I know you're looking after Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, so apologies on your introduction there, and thank you to you and to Paul for that introduction, which is extremely helpful. Do we have any questions, please, from anybody with regard to this agenda item? And Stephen, you might like to help me if there's people with their hands up or whatever who wish to speak. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, please?
Thank you, Joel.
Could we define what an outbreak is? Is an outbreak one person testing positive who may just need to self-isolate and hopefully after 2 weeks, that's the last we hear of it? Or is an outbreak more significant than that?
Sure, Chair, shall I come in?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so what we've arranged with Public Health England is that for the purposes of the Isles of Scilly, now this doesn't translate to elsewhere, this is only for Isles of Scilly, one positive case for us will constitute an outbreak, and we'll respond to it as if it were an outbreak setting. So usually it's 2 or more, but for us we're going to consider 1, and we'll take appropriate containment measures for all of those. So, and I think possibly some issues are to discuss around what the public understands that to mean, because I think that is very different to the way it works on the mainland and in other areas. But that definition for us is 1 positive case.
Thank you. You happy with that, Joel?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Legg and Mr. Legg.
Thank you. Harry?
Yes, I was just wondering if, Paul, you could talk about the new powers that the council was given at the end of last week to close businesses, and just reiterate that that is not something that this board would do, but is...
yes, certainly, Councillor. Certainly, Councillor. I was going to cover it under item 6 or 7, but I'll cover it now if the Chairman's happy for me to do so.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Yes.
So as the Councillor just said, the Prime Minister announced at the weekend that there would be powers vested in local authorities to have some powers to lock down parts of the area. The legislation has been now published as per the guidance, and I'm quite happy to circulate. The guidance is quite readable to the board. But as you quite rightly said, it would not be the role of this board to decide on any lockdown. That would not be the role of this board. And to be clear, lockdown in relation to local authorities relates to pretty much individual premises or events or open spaces. There's an interesting thing with open spaces in the fact that we'll need definitely to liaise with the Duchy of Cornwall and how we go through that process. But it's not, for example, wide-ranging shutdown powers for a whole region. Any lockdown that the local authority does, and it's in effect vested in both the police and the local authority, and so most likely our environmental health colleagues would do that. There's a right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court. We also have to tell the Secretary of State that we've used those powers, and the Secretary of State also has powers to ask us to impose lockdowns if the government feels we should have done and we haven't, or similarly to rescind those lockdowns if they feel that we've gone too far in putting them in place. I think it would be very wise for me to circulate the guidance to you, because I think it makes it very clear what's in and what's out, and it also makes clear that there are a number of premises that are outside of that, which are deemed to be national infrastructure, which are issues such as hospitals, police stations, etc., which would not be subject to local lockdown either. So it's new legislation. It's literally just come in. The guidance has just been published, and I think I'll circulate to colleagues, Chairman, the guidance, which I think is much easier to read than the actual legislation itself, or you're more than welcome to have both.
Thank you very much indeed. Paul, are you happy with that, Harry?
Yes, thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, please, or comments with regard to the outbreak or the evacuation plan?
Mr. May.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Chairman, as you know, I sit on the recovery cell as well, and so this might be for Whitney. As you say, a huge amount of work has been done, and it would appear to be an excellent plan. But I did raise it at the recovery cell meeting as well. So wearing the hat of critical friends that Paul referred to, I'm personally still quite concerned that, as I understand it, we haven't actually got a safe house should the evacuation timescales not work on our side. And I know, Whitney, you felt that when I raised it at the recovery cell meeting that timescales should be okay. But of course, perhaps we ought to work with sort of sod's law, and we might well be stuck with some positive testing and not the availability to get those folks back to the mainland immediately. And a safe house would certainly aid accommodation providers in moving forward with their business.
Thank you for that, John. Paul, do you wish to comment on this?
Can I help, Chairman? It's Nicola.
Yeah, thank you, Nicola.
So what we have put in place is the opportunity where we've got blocked accommodation to provide accommodation for those that are incoming, so they're not COVID positive. So we have plans in place for accommodation providers to work together to look after those people who are coming to the islands who are not testing positive. So they would normally be moving into the accommodation, but they can't because somebody's there COVID positive. So we have that plan in place, and we've also got a backup plan if required in terms of accommodation we can access through the council. So we wouldn't be moving, my understanding of the current status is we would not be moving those that are COVID positive. We'll be accommodating those who are coming into that accommodation who are just arriving on the islands to provide them with a short stay until their accommodation is available.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Legg?
That sort of leads on to the question, okay, what about those in accommodation with shared facilities? I think that's the remaining concern from John's question, really.
Okay.
Whitney, we worked through this morning, so Whitney, do you want to go through what our resolution of that was this morning?
Sure, I'm happy to. So you may be aware that the local incident response team, week on week, tests different scenarios, and one of those scenarios was exactly what the councillor has just brought up, that someone might be in a shared accommodation, testing positive. They could share things like bathrooms, kitchen areas, et cetera, et cetera. So for the most part, the first port of call would be to repatriate that person or that party as quickly as we can. That's safe and feasible. If that's not possible, we're also in contact with the accommodation provider about assessing the facility and, where appropriate, limiting the access of those positive patients to their own room. Things like, so the local incident response team has the ability to ensure we get food and supplies to that person while they're isolating, so they don't have a need to leave the place where they're isolating to any shared parts of the building. The other issue that comes up are things like toilets and bathing facilities. There is guidance from Public Health England that tells us how to deal with multiple occupancy situations, and we go straight to that guidance in that instance. It would be on a case-by-case basis, but for example, it would be to let everyone know if a COVID-positive patient were to be moving to a shared area out of necessity, that we would ensure the proper cleaning, notification, procedures were followed, and things like PPE and et cetera would be put in place. If we risk assess that and we think it's not possible, it's not feasible, and it's not safe enough, we do exactly what Nicola said, and that would be sort of our last port of call, is to move them to a more appropriate facility where we wouldn't have to worry about those risks necessarily. But it's better that we try to contain it where it is as best as appropriate before we start moving people around.
Thank you for that.
So you're happy, Councillor Legg, and John May, are you happy with the reply?
Chairman, yeah, I'm not unhappy with the reply. but I do think it's from a business point of view, it's the wrong way round. We're going to end up disrupting more people than is necessary. If anybody who is tested positive has got some disruption on their hands anyway, and would be better off moved to a safe house, so that business can then continue on offering the service to the incoming guests, shall we say, at the earliest opportunity, and they don't get disrupted as well. So I understand what's being said, but I would just make the point that it would be better if we could keep continuity from a business point of view and move anybody who can't be evacuated swiftly into some form of safe house.
Thank you, John. Dr. Curry?
Thank you, Chair. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think my only concern with that one is around the cleaning procedures that have to be in place once you move a positive case out of a location. So you've got to have, it's possible that even if you did move them, you still need to be able to house the incoming people to accommodate the cleaning, perhaps. And I think we need to explore how that would work in more finer detail, though.
So, thank you very much for that. John, I'm going to recommend that we take that away for further consideration, if you're happy with that, and see where we get with it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any more questions, please, or comments on this agenda item? Paul?
Thank you, Chairman. It was just to reiterate that in terms of the evacuation, or as we're going to hopefully call it now, the repatriation plan that I know a number of colleagues have been involved in, and I know there's been quite a lot of debate both ways on the islands about that plan, and thanks to colleagues who took part in the scrutiny debate on that last week. And similarly, the evacuation plan, repatriation plan itself will be coming to full council on the 30th of July. Again, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Stephen, could I ask you, please, we're to note the outbreak plan and the evacuation plan. Do you wish us to take a vote on that, or is it not necessary?
I don't think it's absolutely necessary, to be quite frank, because I think that's what everybody said. So we will record it as that we will note it. Chief Exec.
Well, I think just for clarity, colleagues, again, it comes back to we're all very clear about our roles here. The outbreak plan, as I said, is the responsibility of the Director of Public Health. And that plan, if you remember, Chairman, was approved by yourself, the Vice Chairman, and the lead member for Place, and will be subject to regular updates. That's the route for sign-off of the outbreak plan. It's just circulated for noting and information to colleagues today. So I think it's just quite clear that we understood that. And as I said, the repatriation plan was my decision in terms of use of public money, and my decision is coming to full council, and full council will have its view on that plan on the 30th of July.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, so we will move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is to note current incident levels for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and any issues from the Outbreak Protection Board for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So over to you again, Paul, please.
I think this is definitely Dr. Curry's world.
Yeah, I think it's over to me.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Curry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give you a summary of the incidents that we've had over the past 2 weeks since the incident response team has been fully up and running. The week of 6th of July, we had 3 symptomatic residents of the island, and all 3 came back with a negative result. The week commencing 13th of July, 2 symptomatics, 1 asymptomatic that we took from a household to be on the safe side, and all 3 of those have also come back negative. Those were residents as well. So far so good. I believe there is one other that was tested within a healthcare facility of a resident that has also come back negative, but doesn't quite fall under our remit because it's a hospital situation, but just for information. So far, no tests in the past couple of weeks from guests to the island. So we're just making sure we get some more proactive comms to make sure that if guests are symptomatic, that they're forthcoming about their symptoms. But residents of the island who have been symptomatic are negative at this time. And in terms of how that compares with the mainland, Cornwall is about on the same. So we're having similar numbers of positive cases come through in terms of, I guess, relative to the population. So very few numbers at the moment. And it's looking like at the moment we're holding quite steady in terms of cases. Is there anything specific that you were interested in terms of incidents?
Not from me, Dr. Curry, thank you. Is there anybody would like to Paul? Thank you.
It was just to add, in terms of what we'll be able to provide with members of this board going forward, is that the data in terms of the national picture on tests, etc., is being ramped up, and there are new dashboards in terms of the number of tests, the number of cases, etc., which are going to be made more and more publicly available over the coming days and weeks. I think Dr. Curry, I believe the Director of Public Health, is going to have a daily national update in terms of figures, and I believe as Chief Exec I'm going to get a dashboard every week. So I think we should be able to furnish this committee with that data in a much more fulsome way than we can at the moment.
Absolutely. And so that should be coming, we're nailing down the details of how that summary looks and how it appears to you. But you'll probably test out a few looks and ways of accessing it with this group and ask for feedback about what makes the most sense in terms of the reporting to this group. So it's coming, and watch this space.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Dr. Curry, please? Nicola, thank you.
I think it's just picking up on where do we want to be as part of a group? So they're reporting, and they're all negative for cases at the moment. How does this group want to handle when there's a positive case? So part of the remit of this group is around communication. Is there a role to think about in terms of preparing some comms? Because one of the greatest things that the community needs is assurance and reassurance. So we just need to have a think about how this group might work in terms of the comms moving forward and be on the front foot when there is a case. So how will we deal with a case that's positive in relation to the community and giving that assurance that's required?
Paul, do you want to come back on this one, or?
I think Dale was first, Chairman, then I will.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see you. Dale, please come in.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it's just picking up on Nicola's point about communications. And it's just something, as we've opened up over the past couple of weeks, certainly prior to that, the information we're receiving in terms of the Harbour Office, and even locally as well, is visitors asking the question, are they welcome? Will they be welcomed on the islands? Is it okay for us to visit? But when we put that into coming forward with symptoms, I believe there might be a reluctance for people to come forward. So the comms going out to the visitor should be one of, there's a robust plan in place, don't feel afraid, to come forward, because it is important that they welcome, but there is a robust plan in place to deal with symptomatic guests or tourists.
Thank you very much for that. Tom, will you note that, please?
Yeah, obviously that's not all something that the council would take on itself. Obviously the business community are already communicating that message that people are welcome, but I guess there's something to be said for tying in comms around our response, and Whitney and I discussed that this morning about if there is an outbreak, what does that look like in practice, and what is our role to play in that, and that we're working on something along those lines. And maybe sharing that with the business community so they can tie it in with their messaging, which is saying you're welcome here, and this is what it looks like in practice if there was something to go off in the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Paul, did you want to come in?
Well, it was just to build on what Tom's just said there. I think part of the role of this board is not just about council, it's about what we can all do to communicate better. And I think Dale's absolutely right in terms of there's been a lot in the media about being unwelcome when you come to holiday destinations, which I don't think has been fair. So I think there is something about giving people confidence that as public authorities, we have got all good plans in place and that people are welcome. So I think as a collective, we can decide who's the best person to get the message out there. But I think that is a message that we should keep repeating, and I agree with Dale on that completely. In terms of Tom's point, there's a national call on the 23rd of July, particularly organised by the leader who's leading on outbreak plans across the country, specifically about communications. And I think there are two things, and I think Nicola was right. There are two aspects that I think we need to perhaps review following that meeting. The first is strong guidance that we should drip as much as we can all the good things we're already doing to give people confidence. So, for example, as Dr. Curry said, we're already testing the plan pretty much every week. We're already going through scenarios every week. We're learning as we're going, and we're amending the plan as we come across issues. And I think perhaps we need to be doing a little bit more of making sure that people don't think this is a plan that's happened on a shelf somewhere we're not looking at. It's a plan that we're actively testing together all the way through. But the other side of that coin is if there is an outbreak, and if that outbreak is bigger than one, and if it begins to cause community angst, we move into crisis comms. And crisis comms, of course, is not just about giving people confidence and calming things down, but that's when people start to point fingers about who did what and all the rest of it. So I think working through some of those scenarios is absolutely right. So the two pushes, just to summarise from a national point of view, and we'll do more following the call on the 23rd, is are we dripping enough? And that's where your role about if you're hearing things that people don't quite understand. And I think a really good point that somebody made about, well, what is an outbreak? Because to me, as a layperson, an outbreak wouldn't be one person, would it? It would sound like, a major thing. And therefore, people wouldn't even understand that an outbreak is one on the Isles of Scilly and why that's really helpful for us. So I just wanted to give some context to that as well, Chairman.
Thank you. Joel?
Yeah, thank you. Paul's latter point started to move into what I was going to say, and that was just to be aware of unintended consequences. The last thing we want to do is put out one bit of communication that suddenly starts panic buying, and the shelves stripped in the co-op because there's one outbreak. So I think it's just being mindful that we've got to say what we're doing, but also be quite clear with the community what they shouldn't be doing. Otherwise it does become a blame game. It does become a potential panic. It does become, as you said, Paul, a finger-pointing exercise. So I think it's just being mindful of the balance we have to take and the unintended consequences that our communication could incur.
Thank you, Joel. Very wise words. Dr. Curry.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I would echo what was just said. I think it's really important to think about the consequences of the comms. And without sounding too negative, because I'm public health trained, so I plan for the very worst, but I hope for the best. And I think we've got to consider how our comms let the public know that while you've been COVID-free so far, in all likelihood, it's going to happen sometime. It might not, but very likely it could happen. And we are very well prepared for that, but not to be blindsided by it. I don't want the public to be blindsided when it happens. And we take every precaution we can. We hope that it doesn't, but if it does, we're ready for it. And I think we would be remiss in not letting the public know that likelihood is there, because I think they will. That sense of panic, Joel, that you're talking about might be compounded by not seeing it coming necessarily. And I don't know how we do that. I defer that to my comms colleagues and how we support that message. And to this board in terms of how we communicate to your residents and guests. But I think it's important that we keep that in mind without being a doomsayer.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else?
Leg.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with what Dr. Whitney Curry just said. I think we should put out some comms to start with, just informing people of this board and its work. Just an announcement to say we're here and we will be communicating with you about an outbreak if it happens. Because I think it's important that people know if it is here, but as you say, we must be very careful about how we go about that, because we don't want to panic people, but we must keep them informed. Information is the key here, I think.
Thank you. Just following up on that, Paul, just a question for you really, and Tom. Following this meeting, personally, I think it would be helpful if we can generate the comms that we were talking about today, and then circulate it to this board before we put it out for any comments. Do you think that's the way to deal with this, or do you have a different plan in mind?
No, I mean, certainly Tom and I will have a chat about that, but I think absolutely, in terms of making people aware that there is what this board is for, what it's about and what it's not about, and perhaps, beginning to, I'm not, as you say, I'm taking Dr. Curry's advice here. It's interesting that the Chief Medical Officer and the Clinical Director for Public Health England all refer to now living with COVID. So I think it's back to that point that she made about, hopefully it doesn't come to the islands, but we are, as a nation, living with COVID, and therefore it's more about giving people assurance that our plans are in place. But perhaps Tom wants to come in as well.
Thank you. Tom, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it was just to ask, was there anything, we obviously discussed a few comms issues there, but was there anything other than what Paul just mentioned there that you specifically wanted to get out following this meeting? Because we referred to more information coming out about the outbreak. I wouldn't be bringing that to the board for approval before that went out. That would be sort of an explanation from public health about what's going on. But we could certainly take an explanation of what this board is back to the board before we put that out. I definitely don't want to use this board as a bottleneck for our operational activity around the outbreak, though.
No, I just think we should take on board, obviously what we discussed today. I just thought it might be helpful to circulate, Tom, so that if we've missed something or there's comments, at the end of the day, you're our comms officer, you'll sign it off with Paul. But I just, I don't mind which way we do this, but clearly we've got to get comms out following this meeting, and we'll leave it to you as to how that process works. I think Joel was waiting to come in.
It was just a quick point which I raised before with members, and that is I would like us to be a bit more creative than just relying on social media, Facebook. I know I've told members before that I've had conversations with individuals who are suffering a huge amount of anxiety because they're not really hearing anything because they aren't on Facebook and they aren't online. So it's just being mindful of how we include those members of our community in that message.
Yeah, I think it goes back to our paper request of Joel, and I think we're trying to work on how we deliver that. I know Harry has got that sorted on St Agnes, and I think we've got plans afoot for how we're going to deal with that on St Mary's and the other off islands. So we just want to make sure we do get the message out to everybody that needs to see it. Tom, I think you come back.
Yeah, it's just follow up once again. Obviously, we covered that in the previous informal version of this meeting, but I'm in conversation with Adult Social Care, and they've assured me that they are putting out some comms around that. So we'll wait to hear back on that.
Thank you. I think I had three more hands up. Who's next to come in, please?
Councillor Grottick, I think, is the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo the words of Dr. Curry, that we're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. And I think we've all accepted that complacency is a danger. And I actually think the wearing of masks in shops will be really good from the point of view of aiding that and educating both visitors and residents to the fact that we must take care here in the same way that they must anywhere else in the country. So I actually see that as a very positive move, which hopefully will, if you like, soften the residents' idea that there actually might be a problem, which might sound a bit strange, but hopefully I'm getting my point across. Thanks.
Thank you, Fran. Who was next, please, Stephen?
Chief Exec, and then if I can say something, that'd be helpful.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I think we just need to be careful that we don't try and get perfection from the beginning. We need to work through this together. As Stephen said in the sidebar, the role of this group, if I came back to, is to help us shape our comms strategy. There will be times when we do have time to circulate things to the board for comment with a bit of thought, but there'll be other times, as Tom said, when we're actually in the thick of it, where comms need to go out very quickly and we couldn't, and get everybody's views on board. So I think it is going to be that we're going to grow the strategy together. But it's the bit I wanted to also make was this is not just a council thing. The whole reason of the engagement board is to help us decide who's the best spokesperson for a different issue. So there may well be times when it's absolutely right the council is being held to account and giving the message, and Robert, you or I, be doing interviews or seeing community groups, whatever it might be. But there'll be times also when it's more appropriate to have Dr. Curry or Rachel Wigglesworth, the Director of Public Health, to give confidence that our medical colleagues are definitely leading, the science behind this. And there'll be other occasions when you as community leaders or business community representatives or working with visiting yachtsmen, whoever knows what it might be, where actually you'd be better to give the comms, but we discuss it here at the board. So I just wanted to be clear, this isn't a council-only thing. This is you helping us shape how do we communicate the best way to give our residents confidence.
Thank you, Paul. That's very, very useful advice. Thank you. Stephen?
Thanks, Chairman. I was only just going to say that perhaps for the next meeting we can present something about comms, and so there can be a bit more of a focused discussion.
Yeah, that would be very good, because I think we just need to be absolutely clear in how we're going with this. It's make sure we're on the right channels with it. So, is there anyone else waiting to come in, please?
Chairman, it's John May.
John, thank you.
Yeah. Just to remind you, Chairman, if I may, that as you know, the IP has got over 300 business members, which it's regularly in contact with, and I'm sure it would be a very good, one of the very good outlets to get messaging out. And I would have thought there were several different methods, but as long as the message is the same, it shouldn't really matter, how many people put the message out. But the IP is a good one. Alongside many others.
Thank you very much. Paul, did you want to come in again?
No, I think that's a point well made.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
That is the last one, I think, Chairman.
And me as well, Stephen, if that's okay.
Yeah. Who was that?
Me, Harry, Robert.
Thank you.
I was going to suggest this when we discussed the membership of the group, but Healthwatch have a lot of knowledge with communicating, especially with those members of the community that Councillor Williams mentioned, those that are perhaps not on social media or have even without an internet connection altogether. And they are obviously well suited for communicating health aspects. Would they be a suitable member for this board, or should we just rely on them as someone we discuss this with separately as a route of communication?
I think I don't know if you want to comment, Paul, but I think probably just a conduit to them, Harry, because we don't overload this board. Really, what's your view, Paul?
I think Harry makes a really good point. To be honest, I think I'd like to think about. Obviously, it's the balance of this board getting too big in terms of its membership, and that's why we had Nicola here or Tanya to make the link to other colleagues who meet regularly, be it the RNLI or the Coast Guard, etc., or the travel companies, all of which legitimately could be on the board. So we've got Nicola and Tanya to make a link to other colleagues across the island. But I think Health Watch is an interesting point that I hadn't considered, because I think they are a body that does carry out a function for us, particularly about the vulnerable and the shielded. So if you'd leave that with me, Chairman, I'll give that some thought and report back at the next meeting.
Fine. Thank you very much. Stephen, you wanted to come in?
No, I put my hand down. I think Paul's still got his hand up, but Tom has as well. Sorry.
Okay. Tom, is your hand up because it wants to be up? You've got the
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's still up. It was just one final point to say. I think we tend to focus on the negative aspects of comms all the time, but there's no two ways about it. We've never, ever put out this much comms in the history of the Council, to my knowledge. A lot of it is excellent quality. We're getting it from the stuff we're getting from the public health team on test and trace. I thought was really, really clear, really excellent quality comms. The FAQs that were put out, and that was a collaboration between all the partners, really excellent information. The feedback we're receiving in terms of comments from the community is really positive. Again, we've never had so many comments from the community. The website is actually costing us more to run than it's ever cost before, because we're getting so many hits on the website. So I want to get this a little bit in perspective. Comms is really good at the moment, and there are some areas where we could improve. I think adult social care is an area where that list of vulnerable adults probably need more in the way of paper comms. We are in contact with them, but I think let's take things one step at a time. We'll get more Outbreak comms coming in the coming week. So Whitney and I have already discussed it today, and we'll have the national sort of webinar to give us a steer on what we do if there's a local lockdown, for example. That will come in the coming weeks, but the volume of stuff we put out and the quality of it, I think, has been really high. And that isn't because I've written it; it's because all of the services who are experts in the various areas have come together and produced some really good factual content. And of course, central government have a role to play. Sometimes there isn't a clear message, and we just have to accept that sometimes and work as best we can around that.
Yeah, I would just like to say from the chair, I think that's absolutely right, Tom, and I'm very impressed with what you've been doing on everybody else's behalf and what's being supplied to you. But I do still think, as Joel pointed out, some people are still falling through the gaps. We have got a population that are not all on social media. Or looking at the internet, and we do need to make sure that we're getting those paper copies out there, as we've said, and also Dale's point earlier. We've got to put out some of the positivity about the welcome here to Scilly. I mean, I've personally been to some degree reprimanded for being too perhaps positive over the last few weeks, and I think the fact is that people are here now. They're here, and we need to make sure they feel welcome. Obviously, safely and cautiously, and making sure that we still keep getting that message out there that this is not going away. We need to wash our hands. We need to make sure we're self-distancing properly, and so on, and doing everything we can to keep Scilly safe, our residents and our visitors. But I think we've got to take away from this meeting the fact that comms are ongoing. We've still got to do more, and we've got to put out a lot of the important points that were raised today. So, Tom, you've come back with your hand again, have you? Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, I forgot to lower my hand. So.
Okay.
Thanks, Dale, sir.
Right. Dale?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. It was just a quick one, just as part of this sort of group looking at the purpose, communicating and engaging with residents and communities and other stakeholders. Actually, the visitors here who we're seeing on the quay, I just wanted to mention it, just in the sort of discussion about comms and the ongoing need for positive comms, and the visitors were saying there's been an alarming number of people who we're seeing going boating or arriving here who have this impression that Scilly hasn't got COVID and therefore they can relax when they get here. They don't need that mask, or they don't need to, even though the signage is there, we've got it here on the quay and it's around town, and there's a alarming number of people who had to re-educate here in a short space of time, who have this impression that it doesn't exist on Scilly, therefore they're safe. And it's how that gets worded up into comms from whoever has to be but we're no different to anywhere else, and that people, it's been a hard effort for everybody, and that has to continue.
Yeah, very, very good point, Dale. Thank you. We'll certainly take that on board. I think, Darren, you wish to come
Can you just excuse me, Chairman? I've got another meeting at 2:30, so can I catch up with you after this meeting about it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you much indeed.
Darren?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really just to echo Dale's points. I think we've heard similar as well, or this perception that because it's never been here, and that there's this lowered risk and this perception that, like you say, you can abandon masks and social distancing and that sort of stuff. But really, just listening to everyone's points, I agree absolutely, and certainly, on my opinion, for what it's worth around the comms side, I think we'd have huge benefit on really just clear, welcoming communication. That yes, absolutely, COVID hasn't been here, but we are thoroughly prepared, and we have regular engagement board meetings where we plan and prepare for, the event of an outbreak. And I think that would go a really long way to reassuring both the locals and also the visitors as well. It's a kind of catch-all statement, isn't it, that we're meeting on a regular basis, and we are prepared from a health perspective and tourism perspective, and channeling that through our local connections and also, the IP, the harbour, that sort of stuff. So I think it's really positive.
Good. Thank you.
Chair, may I come in?
Yeah, Harry?
Thank you. Businesses are absolutely open, and we absolutely are welcoming people to the islands. I've seen some people who are encouraging people who have decided not to come, that they absolutely must come and that we need them. Now, yes, we do need people to come here on holiday, but only if they have deemed that they are happy to do so. No one should be making anyone feel guilty that they are not able to come. So with any comms about us being open for business and welcoming people, that should only be if people feel safe to come, and we will do our best to make sure that they are safe. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that.
Anyone else wishing to come in, please?
I've not heard that, Chairman. That's interesting. It's an interesting point.
Okay. Thank you, Harry. Tom Walton, please.
Thanks, Chairman. There's a lot of anecdotes being raised on this conversation, and what I really want to be careful of is not responding to each individual anecdote. I'm prepared to believe that there are people with, one opinion thinking it's, a mask's not relevant on Scilly, etc. But if I was to put out a message covering everything that we've covered on the call today, I'd be pinging from one end of the spectrum, welcoming visitors, another end of the spectrum saying, be careful, be wary of coming here, etc. And I think what would be really useful is if people could follow up in writing with what they feel the key message is to me following this meeting that is not being communicated, and then we can pick it up at a later point, because I'm really reluctant to take just from this discussion a sort of core set of communications. The next priority we have is obviously outbreak communications. If there is an outbreak on the islands, we need to be prepared for that. These sort of softer issues about the way people feel about being on the islands, I want to be really careful about what we say on that until I've got something in writing I figure on.
Okay. Paul?
Well, I agree partially with what Tom said, but I think also we must remind ourselves back to basics. In terms of all the calls I've been on with all of the leading medical directors, and Whitney might come in here, the thing that we must always keep reminding people is those basic things that have been all the way through about social distancing, wearing a mask where it's appropriate, washing your hands. Those are the things that should be the core of our communication all the time. And I do agree that obviously we need to communicate the role of the board, and yes, I do agree the issues about welcoming and getting the balance right, and I agree with you on that, Tom. But I think we mustn't lose sight of those core public health messages, because if we can get those across, then hopefully there won't be an outbreak on the island, because we'll have prevented it. So it's prevention, number one for me, which is about reinforcing those core messages, and therefore I was really interested in Dale's point, or was it Darren's point, about the sort of gradual slipping away of people seeing, I mean, even, and I'm not going to go there, but I mean, even the point about COVID has never been on the island. How do we know that? How do we know that? I've talked to a number of people who live on the island who said they were a bit poorly back in the day and they came back from Italy skiing. So, we haven't had a positive test on the islands. We don't know it's never been on the islands. So even that can be confusing. So for me, it's back to those basics. It's about those basic core public health messages. We're ready. We're a welcoming place. And we've got all our plans in place. And some of those key things, just keep reinforcing them. But we'll work that up together.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Paul. But just so that Tom has got the information, we have covered a lot of ground today, a lot of different opinions and views. So I think it would be useful if any member wishes to put forward some of their strongest sort of ideas to Tom, and then we'll distill it all and come out with appropriate comms. So if any of you could email Tom, if you so wish, that would be helpful. Now, have we anyone else waiting to come in, please?
Yeah, I'll put my hand up.
Thank you.
At scrutiny last week, I think it was Amy Langdon who raised the point initially about the fact that we do have a lot of communication material in place, a whole suite of information from the repatriation plan, if that's what we're calling it, through to our testing system. But the feeling at scrutiny last week was that although we'd got it, perhaps it wasn't out as widely as it could be. And I was just wondering if our colleagues from Island Partnership had any view whether that changed in the last week, whether we needed to revisit what we've already got before we start inventing fresh.
John, do you have any comments?
I think he's left, Chairman.
Okay.
Can I come in, Robert?
Yeah.
Amy's there as well, don't forget.
Yeah, I can take anything back to IP if you like, that's fine. And just to say, following on to the scrutiny meeting, I did forward everything around Briar, and to the 3 people on Briar that don't have email, I've forwarded paper copies of things. So hopefully everyone's up to date on Briar anyway.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Amy.
The comms regarding getting a test, I've seen comms that's aimed at the visitors. I haven't actually seen anything informing residents that that's the number that they should dial. I believe it is the same number for residents as it is for visitors, but I've only seen comms that are aimed at visitors for it.
I think that council page, sorry, Chairman, I think that council page has been updated now, and there's a residents section as well, all on that same page, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's correct. It should have been updated. I'll double check after the meeting, but it should be there.
Is there a council branded poster or something that could be put up for those not on the internet or delivered? I could produce something myself for St Agnes, but something with the council logo on would be better.
Whitney's got a hand up. I think we have something in train, don't we, Whitney?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm putting together, because actually Tom brought just that point to my attention today, because we do have lots of information going out on social media aimed at residents and guests with that information, but we don't have anything for those people who might not have access to social media yet. So putting together a little half-pager with exactly that information. All the, here's what the Outbreak team does, here's what you do if you've got symptoms, we're well prepared, all of those things, bits and bobs that we've actually talked about today are going to go in that little half pager to go out to people who aren't on as digital as many others are. And so we're going to try to target those people who are outside of those comms streams at the moment. So aim is to get that through to Tom by the end of the week at the very latest. I should be able to whip it together pretty quickly in the next day or so. That's on the horizon.
Appendix 7 at the scrutiny committee was the how to access Crohn's test on the Isles of Scilly for residents. So there was an A4 sheet there that's almost like a poster that was in Appendix 7 of the scrutiny report.
My apologies, I missed Appendix 7.
All right. Thank you very much. Do I have anybody else wanting to come in on this agenda item, please? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the last item, which is item 6, the Isles of Scilly general update. Is there anything further, Paul, you wish to say on this?
No, Chairman. I mean, the main thing was I was going to go through the new powers, but I did that earlier. So, and I said I'll circulate the guidance notes to members so they can see that.
Okay, thank you. Nicola, do you wish to say anything on this?
No, nothing further to add. I think we've covered good ground today.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Curry?
I think the final message that I would leave to you as the engagement board, because I think we should be engaging really well with you as an Outbreak team, is that the team itself is working exceptionally well. We've had some real challenges getting this program off the ground, and it's a very complex setting that we're working Outbreak plans in, and there's been really exceptional communication, patience, and people going out of their way to make sure that all bases are covered. So as the chair of that group, I've really appreciated that multi-agency work that's gone really well so far. So I think that's something important that the engagement board should know.
Yeah, I'd like to endorse that. Thank you very much, Dr. Curry, for that. Now, what I'd like to do is just go around you all, please, who we haven't just been speaking, just to see if there's anything further that you wish to say from your off-island perspectives or whatever. So, Amy, first, please.
Just to say, we've got a really good island-wide email thread that I can circulate things on. That's fine. And there's 3 people that we know of that aren't on email, and they live very close to me, which is handy, so I can just distribute things as need be. Just a little bit concerned, obviously, we don't have a St Martin's rep. Is anyone, or is Jonathan Smith doing that? Or
I'm liaising with Jonathan. We also don't have a Tresco rep. I've tried to contact Diana on Floki. No success yet, but I will.
Well, I'm kind of, obviously as Briar, I'm kind of circulating things to Tom, so.
Okay, yeah. You cover Tresco and Briar, and I'll do St Agnes and St Martin's.
Okay. Thank you very much, Amy. Anything more from you, Harry?
With regards to emails, I have a handful from St Agnes email addresses. I am conscious of GDPR. Now, they have given me their email addresses in good faith and understand why I hold it. But I would prefer that the council actually held an email chain for this information. I don't know whether Paul has anything to say about that, or Tom.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to you offline about that specifically, in terms of GDPR and the email. It depends on what it's for and how it's been put together, but don't worry about that for the moment. We'll take that offline.
Okay, thank you. Joel, have you anything further you wish to add, please?
No, nothing from me.
Fran?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Dale?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just on the topic of comms again, just in terms of the Harbour Authority's ability to access or to contact all of our customers, and not only residential but all of our visiting customers, happy to share whatever information comes out of this group or communications we want to send out from this group to them. Very easy for us with a database that we have, so I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much indeed. John, I think we've lost John, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Darren, anything more from you, please?
Just one point, really, just for the information of the group. I'm sure you've seen all over the news about the legislation and police powers in relation to the COVID-19 and how we're going to police it moving forward. It's just to reinforce the point, really, we support public health or a public health official in that, so we won't proactively go out and ruffle feathers or cause a nuisance. We'll very much do it in support of the local council and a public health official in the event of. So just really to bring everyone up to speed on that.
Thank you very much, Darren. Any of our officers have anything further they wish to say, please?
No.
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Right. In that case, thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Chairman.
Very useful meeting.
Chairman.
Paul, yes?
You forgot the item on terms of reference that you were going to go back to.
I certainly did, didn't I? I told you earlier you needed a new chairman, a chief executive. Yes, certainly. We need to adopt the terms of reference and membership. So if anybody is against adoption of the terms of reference, or first of all, I should say, has anyone got any questions regarding the terms of reference or membership apart from Health Watch, please?
Fran.
No. Dan, sorry? Fran.
Thank you. I'm having difficulty accessing them, Chair, and I didn't realise they were joined to the invite. So would you be kind enough just to read them out, please?
Yeah, okay. Just bear with me one second. Okay. 1. Context. Government has mandated the establishment of a local outbreak engagement board as part of the UK's recovery programme for COVID-19 pandemic, allowing flexibility for implementation. 2. Purpose. The primary function of the board is political oversight of the local delivery of outbreak planning, response and recovery, communicating and engaging with residents and communities and other stakeholders. The engagement and communication focus relates to the test, trace, contain programme outlined in the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly local outbreak plan in the event that an outbreak is identified and consideration of the level of alert. Health advice regarding testing and preparedness for an outbreak is expected to come through existing channels. The principal objective of communications is to deliver accurate, clear and timely information and advice to the public so they feel confident, safe and well informed, as stated in the non-statutory guidance regarding emergency response and recovery. 3. Functions. The board is a committee of the Council of the Isles of Scilly, established under the Local Government Act 1972. The board will report to full council in the form of updates and recommendations. 4. Decision making. The board will reach agreement regarding the direction of existing resource to support its stated purpose. If it cannot reach agreement by consensus, then a formal vote will be called by the chairman. Co-operative members of the board have voting rights except where a decision is made regarding considerations of council budget and resource direction, where this is additional to current provision. This will require a recommendation to full council for approval. Membership. At the first meeting of the board, a number of non-elected representatives will be co-opted to the board's members. These are expected to include, at the minimum, the Dutch informal and the business representative. Council of the Isles of Scilly employees, including the Director of Public Health, attend the board in an advisory capacity only. The Chairman of the board is the Chairman of the Council. Then we have the members which you know about. 6. Frequency and quorum. The local engagement board will meet as and when required and will be scheduled monthly in the first instance and aligned appropriately with calendar dates for full council. The quorum of all meetings is 3. This should include at least one representative from the council and at least one co-opted member. Okay.
Thank you.
So, could I please have a proposer for the adoption of the terms of reference, please, and membership?
Yeah.
Fran, and seconded by Harry, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, before we just agree them, I mean, it does state that the chairman of the board is the chairman of council. Now, we elected you as a matter of course, but should it not be one or the other and not both? It states that it is the chairman of council, but as we were free to elect you as chair, I just wonder if there's a discrepancy there, but I'm happy to propose them as they are, just with perhaps Stephen giving comment on that.
Well, perhaps, Harry, if you were to put that to Stephen in writing in an email, he'll get back to you with a fuller, explanation about that. But what it is fundamentally is that you have rights as a committee under the 1972 Act to elect whoever you want as chairman. We can't stop that, but the government say politically it should be led politically. So that's why we say the chairman of council should be your choice to lead this.
But that is my point. The terms of reference do not say the chairman of the board should be the chairman of council. They say the chairman of the board is the chairman of council. So therefore, how can it be held under the Local Government Act 1972 if we are not free to elect its own chair? Now, I'm perfectly happy with the way this is, but I'm just a little, just a minute detail there.
Sure. Well, Harry, as you know, Stephen's had to leave the call, but if you're happy in principle, I think we need to move on and try and sort this with Stephen.
I think, Chairman, if we just, I don't see any problem with what Harry just said. If we changed it to should be, and then, it's a small point, but I think that would be fine.
Okay. Right, well, we'll do that then. And so, unless anyone's got any objections, we've got a proposal from Councillor Grottick, seconded by Harry Legg with that small amendment. Are there any members of this board against the adoption of the terms of reference, please? No, then they're carried. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Paul, for bringing that item back to my attention. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye.
I'm just taking